Hey everybody, it's Matt Powers. I'm an author, educator, entrepreneur, citizen scientist, and family guy, and I teach people all over the world how to live more regeneratively. Thank you for tuning in. And today I want to share with you my original first video. So I started on this path when I was still a teacher, and my first permaculture, presentation, video was an example of a Lessig method presentation. And it was about where did California's water go? And my solutions were permacultural. And I was modeling this to my students who are 10th graders in high school. But this is like the beginning. The next thing I did was Permaculture Voices in front of, over 600 people live on a giant stage later that year. And then my book came out, the Kickstarter happened, I retired from public school teaching and became a full-time curriculum creator and online course creator. But it began with this video. And this video was on another channel, my teacher's channel that was connected to my teacher's email, which you actually can see in here. And I just it was always there, and now it's not. And so I don't know what happened. Maybe they ended the account or something, but I'm going to continue to share the how on all these solutions, from the backyard scale all the way to the large scale, to bioregional, to continental, to ocean wide. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. Enjoy this video, and thank you for watching. Hey, so I'm Matt Powers, and I live in California where all those fires are, where that drought is, because there's not very much water. And it got me thinking, where did all the water go? Because I remember, middle school science with the water cycle. The water doesn't leave. It just cycles through. It's trapped, I guess, in the groundwater, but we're pumping the groundwater, and it's running out. So it had to go somewhere. And so I was doing some research, and the National Geographic has this great map online showing all the areas where we're damming the water and where we're piping it to. And it's really kind of all the way around the watershed of the Central Valley. So you can see that we're actually blocking the water for the farmers, even though we're damming and giving it to the farmers. And if we look closer at our area, we can see that these capillaries of water and everything, we're blocking them each at a critical point. This is North Fork, this is where that big reservoir is, siphoning all the water down. And then I was looking at this, seeing all these, how they led to Tulare Lake bed. And then I got to thinking about, where's Tulare Lake? I've never seen any lake in the Central Valley. And I looked it up, and Tulare Lake was actually the largest body of water west of the Mississippi. And it was fresh water and had ducks and fish. It was kind of like a hunter's Disneyland. And so it took up a huge amount of space. Actually, Highway 41 was its northern border of the shore. And so there once was this huge lake, and as I researched it more, I realized that we blocked what created the lake, and that disappeared quite quickly. And then they turned it into places like Paso Robles, which is right here. So for us to bring that back, we'd have to get rid of a few towns, I think. So thinking more about Tulare, I was reading stories about how their wells are running dry. And I read about how they're going to work and they can't flush their toilets, they can't wash themselves, they can't use water on their crops at home. And they go to work and all the agricultural companies are pumping our water, and they're still using the water on the crops and the animals. And this is the first time ever they felt strange jealousy of the animals and the water they have, the free water that the plants have and everything, and they don't have access to. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, Tulare is kind of close to Fresno and kind of close to Madera County, where we live. And so I looked up the Central Valley Aquifer, and this is one of the pictures. And you can see that it's very big, and it's all connected. And the area where the watersheds are, where the water's coming in and filling this, is where all our dams are. we're capturing the water before it cycles through the water cycle. We're preventing it from going in here. And Sacramento, Fresno, and Tulare are all in the same exact aquifer. So it's reasonable to assume that if Tulare went dry, then at some point we could go dry too, or Fresno could go dry. We have many teachers and students who live down there. And so I thought about all this water is leaving. Well, what are they doing with it? What are those coastal cities doing with our water? And I just did a quick Google search about where the water goes, and sewage and storm drain water runs into the ocean, directly into the ocean. So in the urban communities, they're going to brush their teeth with our water, spit it out, and it's going to go into the ocean. And it's not even close to where we live. It's a completely different part of California. And then I found this. And I learned that lots of the bottled water that people are selling all over the globe is coming from California. It actually looks like most in this picture. And then if you look closer, we see that it's actually clustered around two main cities, LA and San Francisco. That's our water. And then if you look closer, kind of wonder, who's that? It's Aquafina, it says. And then at this point, I kind of was like, all right, wait. Is this just like a negative thing? Is this made up? Is this true? And I started being like, I need to know if this is like where this is leading, if this is accurate. And so I went to Aquafina's own websites. And they're taking Fresno tap water to bottle and sell outside of the Fresno area and outside of our ecosystem. And then they're doing it in Vegas and they're doing it in Sacramento. So it's the same aquifer that they're tapping in two different places. And then I thought about Fresnoans, the Fresnans. They don't have the ability to just take water as much as they like. They actually are restricted. They can only water their lawns twice a week. And then it made me think, is Aquafina still being offered everywhere? Is it still being sold everywhere? Are they still taking it out of the ground as fast as they can, making money off of it while we're restricted? So I didn't really like that. But then I thought, what about the farmers? Because, it's where all the food's coming from, right? And then I thought about, well, how much food is really coming out of the Central Valley? And so I looked it up, and it's pretty dramatic, actually. So Bolthouse is doing 6 million carrots a day. You just, Google this stuff, and it's right there. Almost 2 billion pounds a year of almonds. And they're using 800 billion gallons of water a year. And that's enough for 7 months of water per citizen in California, free. So it's an incredible amount of water they're using to grow the food. And then they're exporting the food. And then I wanted to know how much how much is California responsible for the consumption of American food? And so I looked this up, and if you look at the produce that we're selling, it's almost all in the 90s and 80s. Or you could say we are giving over half the food easily. And if you look at the things that are growing and we're selling, a lot of them are mostly just water. Like cantaloupe or any other melon and any kind of citrus is mostly water. They're like a flavored packet of water. So we're exporting our water in the form of produce. So that's another way we're losing water. And so California is losing its water by damming, rerouting the water eventually to the ocean, by bottling the water and exporting it, and by agricultural exports. So what can we do about all this? Well, we could stop bottling the water, or we could allow bottling in glass and then to locals so that it stays in the local ecosystem and doesn't get exported out. We could stop the water from leaving. We could decommission the dams, the pipes, and the canals. We could microdam, swale, and reforest along the key line, which is where the valley meets the mountain. So it's concave meets convex. Right at that point, you can cut the land, and it allows moisture to go in right there, all the way around the valley. And then it creates a lens of water and it can restart ecosystems. And if you're planting trees along that, the condensation, part of the water cycle, remember, the condensation that's created traps even more water, and all this ends up making rain. So we could do that. We probably don't even need all the water that's in those dams to do that. We probably could even give a portion of the water continuously to the farmers. What about farming in general, though? The reality is that we don't need chemicals and all the costs that are associated with it for fertilizers and biocides. We can use 1/5 the water that we're using currently in all the agricultural practices using mulch and no-till practices. And most importantly, we need to make sure that we get higher yields. So these farmers that have been doing this for 30, 40, maybe even 60 years have an incentive to change. And it has to be less work over time. So we need to switch to a perennial-based agriculture. Stuff you plant once and then lasts for decades, if not hundreds or thousands of years. And then we also need to have diversified yields. So instead of just an endless row of grapes, it's an endless row of grapes that are growing on tree crops with cover crops around their bottoms and roots crops around their bottoms. And then you have quadrupled your yield in the same square footage. This does lessen the yield of each thing by crowding it in. But what happens, but you can continuously crowd it, and at a certain threshold, you start getting way more yield as you stack. And so everything goes down to 75% yield from optimum yield, but then you have 3-4 times the yield because you have 5 elements. This is an example with permaculture in Jordan. This is the lowest place on earth. This was featured in Lawrence of Arabia. It was a desert then, and it was a desert now. And in 3 years, they were able to grow this much food with 1/5 the water of the people doing agriculture in Jordan, and open. They're all doing it in tents. It's the only way they can trap the moisture. And we need to encourage all the other states to build their own soil and support their local farmers. There's local farmers everywhere in America, and they do need support. But what about all the money we'll lose from the agricultural sales? Where's Tulare Lake? Because that's what would happen, right? If there's no water, we're just going to turn into this. Because in California, where there's water, there's life. And if there's no water for anyone, there's no California. So the best thing anyone can do is we can harvest our rainwater, we can garden, and we can recharge the landscape with swales, cuts on the land that are on contour. So it's flat, like walking in the airport, when it's like super flat. It's all the same elevation every way, so it follows the snake of elevation in the land. But what happens is water goes in flat and it soaks in and it recharges the landscape. So what else, right? Because that's what we can personally do, but we could actually go back in time and do some old technology. This is an air well. It uses the condensation of the dew on the rocks in the morning. And it actually works extremely well. You can make a more modern version of this, like they're trying to do in Africa right now. Or you can use some electricity and go really, really high tech, and you can start pulling it out of the air, which is completely possible and has been around for several years. LA and San Francisco just have to buy it. So we have the science, we have the answers. It's just up to us to utilize them. Thank you.